I don't know if I'll ever be able to get that image out of my head of Thelma Krause sitting on that United Center floor, waving her arms in shock that her late husband was still being booed, was still being filled with hate after all these years at the Ring of Honor ceremony.
I have two questions. The first is, who thought it'd be a good idea to boo Jerry Krause when his widow was there? And who thought it would be a good idea to maybe even go down that road and allow the booing to even be a possibility?
I don't know the answer to either of those. Again, Jerry, it's a very complex situation with Jerry Krause. Never in my wild imagination did I think that Jerry Krause would be booed. I've had multiple experiences with Jerry Krause. I covered Jerry Krause. I grew up a Bulls fan. Back in the day, when I was younger, as a fan, booed Jerry Krause. I yelled at Jerry Krause at the Chicago Stadium to make a trade at one time. So I could be honest with that. I had a run-in with Jerry Krause. I've told you on this show before. Jerry Krause was not a pleasant man to deal with.
Most people who are in our industry have had one of those experiences with Jerry.
Yeah, and there are other people who got to know him on a deeper level will tell you that deep down, he was like, if you really, really, really got to know him, that you saw a different side of him. You also had an experience on the air. He was the only man that made you
take my headset off and turn my microphone off.
And you stopped.
I just walked away from the microphone and told Cap, this is all yours.
He had a very, very poor bedside manner. But again, this is not to disparage him. So I was sitting there at the United Center, and Jesse Rogers was to my left, and my 7-year-old was to my right. And again, it was a weird situation for the Ring of Honor ceremony, because we already knew that Michael and Scotty weren't there. So for your two stars of the Ring of Honor to not be there, it was weird to begin with. And then Dennis, I guess, wasn't there because he couldn't get in, or so he said, because of the snow.
Right, travel issue.
And again, knowing that Jerry had been not with us for 7 years, I never would have thought Jerry would have been booed.
Not the time and place as far as I'm concerned, but you were there.
I didn't think that anyone would give him the rousing standing ovation, but I didn't think that anyone would boo someone who's been gone. And then to cut away and see Thelma there. No, I don't know if anyone knew that his widow, Thelma Krause, would be there either. It just made things especially awkward. It also then, once you saw her and you saw how emotional the people who were booing, no one in my section was booing, but when you saw her, it sort of quieted down the boos.
Because she was distraught, was she not?
Oh, and Ron Harper...
Understandably so.
Ron Harper was putting his hands on her shoulders and to calm her down. And as many people who defended, there were some who have defended the crowd. There are other people who have covered the Bulls who have reminded me this, that every ceremony the Bulls have ever had, and it doesn't make this right, I'm just giving you history. And it's sort of like Pavlov's dog, right? Where the dog was conditioned that when he would hear the bell, he was ready to eat. And his mouth would start to water because the dog would know it was time to eat. That whenever there was a ceremony, Bulls fans knew it was time to cheer Michael, Scotty, and Phil, and it was time to boo Jerry. Because with every banner ceremony, they would boo Jerry Krause. When Jerry Krause got his banner retired in 2003, he was booed. Doesn't make this right. Now, I'm not excusing anybody.
Right.
You don't boo someone like that in this environment. It's
even you, who is a booer, knows that there's booing protocol.
No. And again, if you weren't going to give him a golf clap or don't cheer at all. You don't have to love the man And again, The Last Dance, which I don't understand why The Last Dance would even take heat. The Last Dance was just a reminder. It was a chronicle of history. It chronicled the history that was this very complex situation of the 6 championships. And I left the building, I tweeted about this, very sad. Like, in the sports context, don't get me wrong. Like, I wasn't, in the grand scheme of things, as a father and someone who's, battled cancer in my life, this wasn't something that really brought me. But in the sports landscape, I was sports sad, because even in one of the most remarkable things we have ever seen in our town from a sports landscape, it's still a crap storm. Like, this is the greatest thing maybe any town could ever see. The greatest athlete probably ever, one of the greatest teams in American sports history, and yet it's one of the most complex soap operas ever.
One of the best Batman and Robin combos in all of sports history, certainly in the NBA.
And now Batman and Robin hate each other.
Right.
Okay? Batman and Robin at one time hated Commissioner Gordon. Is that Jerry Krause? Is Jerry Krause Commissioner Gordon?
Sure.
Like, Phil Jackson, who I don't know what character he would be, he hated Commissioner Gordon too.
There was a whole lot of dislike that existed with one of the greatest dynasties in sports history.
And now, like, at a time where we're so far removed from this team is a shell of what it used to be. These are the glory days. These are the days that we should look back on and we should embrace and we should love. And these are the moments in time that we get to bring us back to the better days of the Chicago Bulls. Not the days where the Bulls are blowing a 15-point lead to the Golden State Warriors, who aren't even good anymore. These are the days that we should go back to and say, boy, those were so awesome. It was amazing. And for 15 minutes at halftime, it brought me back to 1995 and 1996 when they won 72 games. And then they won the NBA championship in the second three-peat. And it made me forget about all the bad sports moments. Instead, you left the United Center feeling so icky on so many different levels, because the crowd booed Jerry Krause, because Michael Jordan wasn't there. Why would you ever plan a ceremony and you're the bride? Like, I think I said this on Friday. You planned a wedding and you decided not to let the bride RSVP first. The first person you check with when you plan a wedding is the bride. Hey, can you make it?
Well, usually the bride is planning the wedding, too.
Well, so. Right. If the bride says, no, this date doesn't work for me, then you say, okay, we'll choose a different day. And that's Michael Jordan. You have to make it work with Michael Jordan. And so Michael and Phil, or Michael and Scotty aren't there. And then this wasn't talked about enough either. Phil gets this rousing standing ovation. Phil can barely stand. Phil finally is getting his due again with the Chicago Bulls and his bitter divorce here in Chicago with Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause. And he's soaking it in.
I can't remember the last time Phil and the Bulls were even in the same conversation.
Right. And it's been so long since I don't remember when he was back in Chicago. And they cut his standing ovation off, and they took the spotlight off of him. And then all of a sudden, Tony Kukoc was next. And when they took the spotlight off of him, like, the fans were shocked, and Kukoc was next. And some fans started booing that because they stopped the standing ovation from Phil Jackson. Like, people wanted to love this, and you shorted Phil Jackson his standing ovation. Let people soak this in. And then you have Steve Kerr, who is this multi-time NBA champion. He won 3 with the Bulls. I believe it's 2 with the Spurs. How many has he won now with Golden State? 3 or 4?
4.
4. He's won how many rings? He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. He's sitting center court as a member of the 95-96 Bulls, who, by the way, are going in in this Ring of Honor presentation, all the members. You don't even recognize him and call him by name. Luke Longley flew all the way in from Australia. You don't even recognize him by name. Ron Harper is there. You don't even recognize him by name and introduce him. Well, look, it takes 1 second to give each guy their individual due.
Doesn't sound like this went well.
Like the Bulls, only the Bulls. And so like the headline was, yes, that Jerry Krause got booed. But like a true Reinsdorf-owned team, nobody infights like a Jerry Reinsdorf team, whether it's Ozzy fighting with Kenny, Ozzy's kids fighting with Kenny, whether it's Chris Sale fighting with Kenny, whether it's Tom Thibodeau fighting with Gar and Pax, whether it's Derrick Rose fighting with Bulls team doctors. I could go on and on of all the infighting that's happened, whether it's the Bulls are about to win their 4th championship. We were told the story during the Last Dance. Their 4th championship. They just won 72 games. They're in Seattle. And Jerry Krause has Tim Floyd with him in Seattle because he wanted, and this is why Jerry Krause gets booed, he wanted Tim Floyd to replace Phil Jackson after the 4th championship, not the 5th,
right?
Not the 6th. Tim Floyd is with the Bulls as they're about to win their 4th championship in Seattle. Jerry Reinsdorf never stopped that from happening. But, and like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Well, you're the owner. Make things right. Stop the infighting. Your teams have always had infighting. Nothing ever works. Even in good times, your teams fight. And here we are. I felt icky. I felt dirty. It was disgusting. And I walked home and I walked in the house and I just felt sad. Sad.
That wasn't the goal. The goal wasn't to make you sad.
No, and I get it. Again, I'll circle back to the Jerry Krause booing. It was bad. It was shameful, but it's also easy to circle the fans and make them the scapegoats. But the Bulls and the Bulls themselves and ownership have always created this environment where they have embraced infighting. They let Jerry fight with Phil. They let Michael fight with management. They wanted the breakup. They ended the dynasty early. They didn't introduce even their own players. They had a guy fly in from Australia, and they wouldn't even introduce him to the crowd.
What was the explanation for that? Was there one?
We reached out to Bulls ownership today, and I got a response that he was out of town and could not join us. But so to me, it's not a good look for the fans, but it's more than just about the fans.
It's complicated.
This was a very bad ceremony from start to finish. And in my book, if you can't do it right, you just don't do it at all.